Okay, when I'm starting a beat, I'm always going to start with the kick drums as they're kind of the main part in defining a groove. So let's start with this loop here, which is called Rattle Kicks, and it's part of my Cosmic Drum and Bass sample pack on Loop Masters. The loop itself is already at 170 BPM, so it'll loop nice and tight, and it's already got all of the markers set in place. So let's turn the channel down to about -13 dB to give ourselves some headroom that we mentioned earlier, and we'll have a quick listen to that loop. Okay, so those kicks sound pretty fat, pretty punchy, and got a nice rhythm to it as well. However, what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the slice to MIDI function so I can rearrange the loop and make my own rhythm and pattern and edits out of it. So the slice to MIDI function uses these markers down here, these transient markers, to chop the loop up into individual hits and put it in a drum machine sampler so I can rearrange it and come up with my own rhythms. So Ableton should find these markers for you. However, if it doesn't, on a more complex loop, you're going to have to control click down here and choose insert transients where you want to make a slice point. However, Ableton's found all the markers for us, so we're going to control click and we're going to choose slice to new MIDI track. It will come up and ask us how many slices. Click OK, because we know all the markers are in the right place. Okay, so our original loop is now chopped into individual slices in our drum machine sampler down here, and we also now have the MIDI file here with the exact same pattern as per our original loop. Okay, so let's get rid of the original audio loop because we don't need that anymore. And let's have a look at rearranging this MIDI part. Okay, so here's our original loop. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to simplify it a little bit. Delete this whole second half and copy this first half over, just to simplify it a little bit. I also think I prefer this first kick drum here more than these second ones. So I'm just going to bring these all down onto the same kick drum. So we've got a bit more of a simple rhythm now, a nice 2-bar rhythm. Okay, that's a cool little loop that we've got going there. But what I'm also going to do is I'm going to add a little roll at the end of the loop here, just to give the loop a little bit more groove and a little bit more character. I'll add 2 kicks in on 16th just by double clicking. So you can hear that gives it a little bit more of a roll effect, a bit more character to the loop. And then down here, the velocities, which are set to control the volume, I'm just going to fade these in a little bit, which is going to add to that kind of roll effect and give it more groove. Okay, that's nice. Okay, so we've now rearranged that loop, made it our own. Okay, so I'm happy with our rhythm that we've got there. Let's have another quick listen. So pretty simple, nice and tight with this little roll. Okay, but what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to tighten up those kick drums and make them sound a little bit more punchy. I'm going to do that using the envelope within the drum rack sampler. Okay, so down here in our drum sampler, or the drum rack sampler, we've got attack, decay, sustain and release, which controls the envelope of the individual hits, which allows you to shape those. So let's have a little listen how that works. Here's our standard kicks. And if I bring this sustain down to nothing, I can then use this decay to shorten the hits like that, which is probably a bit over the top really. So what I wanted to do, I just wanted to tighten them up slightly. So we'll probably have that about 1.2 seconds, which kind of tightens them up, gives them a bit of space between each other. Okay, so I'm happy with our kick rhythm, so let's get a snare drum in there. what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the Ableton drum rack sampler again. It's a nice and simple sampler. I'm going to go back to my sample pack. I'm going to choose this snare called SD Room. I'm going to drag it straight onto one of these little pads here. You can trigger it down here. You can hear it's almost like a bit more of a side stick than a snare, but I think that's really going to suit this beat that I want to create. So come back up here to the track, double click in this empty slot here to create a MIDI part. Then I'm going to trigger both parts over here. And we can just start putting our snare drum in here. So the first one I'm going to put here. And the second one I think I'm going to put over here. Okay, so I like that rhythm, and I'm sure you can probably work out where we're going to with this beat. Okay, so our snare drum's cool, but let's tighten it up again using the decay and sustain as we did with the kick drums. So I'm going to bring that down, bring the sustain right down. You can hear that's already really tightened it up. Just lengthen that a little bit out, I reckon. That sounds pretty cool. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that, but I think what else I'm going to do is I'm going to just pitch the snare down. Let's see. Yeah, 3 semitones, as I think that sits a little bit better with the kick drum. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Okay, so I'm happy with our kick and snare rhythm. Pretty tight. But let's give it a little bit more movement by adding in a little shuffle. I'm going to go back to the Cosmic Drum and Bass sample pack, and I'm going to pull in a ready-made shuffle at 170 BPM called Spectre Shuffle. Put that onto an empty space like that to create a track. Okay, so there we go. Fits in straight away, nice and tight. I will show you how to make your own shuffles later on in the lessons. But for the benefit of getting a vibe now and getting something rolling, let's just use one of these. I'm just going to tuck this down a little bit, it's a bit too loud. Right, probably somewhere about there. That sounds cool. So I'd say our beat needs one final element just to get it really moving so we can move on. And I think that element is a straight hi-hat, which we're going to use a drum rack sampler to create. Drag that over here to create a new channel. I'm going to go back into my sample pack. I'm going to select this hi-hat here called Hinge. Just going to drag that straight on to one of these pads here. Go back up to the channel and double click to create a MIDI part. And then I'm literally going to just put in a straight 16th pattern like this. Go back to the drum rack sampler. Make sure that velocity down here is set to 100%. That's going to control the volume of each individual hit. Take the channel down a little bit. And then I'm going to select every other hit like that. And down here, I can now just tuck that in a little bit, which will make those ones slightly quieter, giving our rhythm a little bit more groove. So let's have a listen to that. So the hi-hat on their own, we can see changing this velocity here, which then in turn changes the volume, allows us to create a different groove. So I'm going to set it about there. Yep, I like that. Again, I'm going to come back into the drum rack sampler, tighten this up with the sustain and the decay. Probably something like that, in fact. Nice and tight, I think. Bit more level on it. Okay, sounding good. Okay, so I'm happy with the beat at the moment. However, just listening to it, I think that maybe the snare could have a little bit more brightness at the top end, like a little bit more real poppy, snappy brightness. So let's look at doing that using some layering techniques. I'm going to go back to the drum rack sampler. I'm going to use one of Ableton's inbuilt presets. I'm going to go for an 808 clap, because let's face it, everyone loves an 808. I certainly do. Move this new clap track over to next to our snare, just so we're all tidy. Turn that down a bit. Then just copy that MIDI part over. Which means when we open this up, we can see two MIDI parts in exactly the same place as our snares. Just move those onto our clap, which is over here. We can trigger that. And then we can hear our clap over the top. Now we need to do a bit of work on that clap, so let's solo that clap and have a look what we can do with it.